House hacking is probably the easiest way to benefit from all the advantages that property ownership has to offer. The best part of all is that it doesn't have to break the bank. Let's face it, we all want to live comfortably and live in a large and nice looking property, but at the end of the day, it's really expensive. Most South Africans will never be able to afford a house upwards of 2 million rand that will tick all the boxes. In this video, I'm going to share with you the strategy of house hacking in South Africa and how you can effectively live in a property for free or for a very small amount. If you've watched this channel before, you know that I like to keep things simple. We don't have to overcomplicate these things that only a small percentage of people will understand it. So my goal on this channel is to educate you guys and share my experience and my opinion. With that said, I'm going to show you a practical example of house hacking and how we can actually run the numbers. I created an Excel sheet specifically for this strategy to make things simple. Before we jump into the important part of the video, what is house hacking? So the strategy of house hacking can be done in a few different ways, which is a great and creative way to use real estate to grow your net worth, own quality type of real estate, and without breaking the bank. So simply put, house hacking is buying a piece of property and renting out a portion of that property, and hopefully it covers a large portion or the entire amount of your bond. So it can be as simple as buying a large house and renting out a garden flat or a cottage. The rent you will receive from that tenant will of course cover a portion of your expenses. The idea would be to have more than one unit to pay for the entire debt that you have on the property. So ideally you would have 2 or 3 bachelor flats or garden cottages that creates a certain amount of income that covers all of your expenses. You can always step this up and consider subdividing the property or subdivide the main house and rent out a portion of the house as well as the garden cottage. Something else you can consider is building an additional dwelling on the erf, but of course there's so many different costs involved with this strategy. The cool thing is that you can use this strategy in so many different creative ways so that it suits your specific needs. With that said, I want to show you guys an actual example of a property that we are going to analyze, and I wanted to show you how easy it can be to find a unit that will work for this strategy. So the simplest way to do this is to find an area that you would like to live in. I chose Randburg in Gauteng, and you can search for a specific suburb if you want to. It really depends on where you want to live and where you want to execute this strategy, because at the end of the day you would be living in a portion of the house, so you probably want to choose a pretty good area. With that said, I searched for Randburg, Gauteng. I chose the property type as house, and I added a filter which only shows properties that has flatlets. And I came across this unit. So we can see that this property is listed for 1.95 million rand. And unfortunately, this would cost you around 20,000 rand without rates and taxes every month to live in this entire house. The cool thing is that it shows that this property has a main house that is being rented out for 10,000 rand. It has an additional cottage that is rented out for 6,200 rand and a flatlet for 4,000 rand. So already this property has the potential to run it as a house hacking strategy. It really looks quite nice in my opinion. There's always room for improvement. You can do a few basic renovations and you can actually increase the rent that you receive for these cottages and flatlets. So with that said, what I've done is to create an Excel sheet specifically for house hacking. So if you want access to this Excel sheet, you can simply join my cheapest membership. I think it's like 20 bucks. Send me a screenshot proving that you joined to my email. I'll link it down in the description, and I'll share this with you so that you can run the numbers yourself. So it's really quite simple, and we'll start here at the top left corner, and we'll just type in Randburg, which is the area, and this is in Gauteng. And then we have a look at the purchase price. So like you might know, I never pay full price for property, and I always make a lower offer depending on the specific property. Let's say for example the purchase price of this property is 1.85 1.5 million. And something I added was just the average land value and the building value of this property, and this will obviously depend on the specific location, the type of property, and the condition of the property as well. Something I always add is upfront repairs, and this will depend on the condition of the property as well. So let's say, for example, we make this 30,000 rand that we'll have to use to repair the property and get it in a perfect condition or close to perfect condition. And then of course we have to factor in the closing costs of this property. If I scroll onto property 24 and go down and view the breakdown of the total once-off cost, we can see that we'll have to put down 131,000 rand of our own money. So let's just do that. So that means this property all in all will effectively cost us just above 2 million rand if we made a lower offer. Next, we'll scroll to the right hand side, which shows rental revenue assumptions. So obviously this already has rental income, and the first one we'll use is the cottage and then the flatlet. So we can type in unit 1, which is 6,200 rand, and the second unit is 4,000 rand. So obviously the more units there are, the better your income will be, the less you will have to pay to live on that specific property. So the total monthly rent we can receive for this property is 10,200 rand, and something that I like to account for is vacancy. So obviously those 2 units won't be rented out always, there will be some vacant months. So I would just use 5% as an example. Again, you can change all the numbers that's highlighted in red so that you can ultimately decide whether it makes sense or not. Then we go to the next tab where we can either put down a down payment. Let's say for example we won't put a down payment. The finance amount will then be 1.85 million rand. Again, no down payment. The interest rate, which is prime rate, would be 11.75%. This will obviously be different for everyone depending on your credit score, so it's cool to edit this so that it will show you exactly how much you will have to repay. And this is over a loan term of 30 years, meaning our mortgage payment would be 18,674 rand that we'll have to pay out of our own pockets, which is a lot of money. So at the end of the day, our cash outlay is going to be our repairs upfront and our closing cost, which is a total of 161,000 rand. And then we get to our revenue. Like I said, the rental income of our 2 units is going to be 10,200 rand. We are going to use a vacancy of 5% like I mentioned. And something I added just to give you a better perspective of the vacancy is that you will effectively have to save 510 rand or 6,120 rand every year to account for your vacancies. Of course, this is not really a monthly expense, but more of a type of reserve fund that you'll have to build. It means that our gross income would be 9,690 rand or 116,280 rand yearly. Now we get to the good stuff, the expenses. Obviously, we have property taxes on a house, which is just your rates and taxes. This one shows it's 974 rand. So let's just type in 974 rand. And we also have to pay for insurance. So this will depend again on a couple of factors, but I used 550 rand as an example. Then we can also consider maintenance and repairs. And the cool thing about this sheet is you don't have to use it if you don't want to. So we can, for example, remove the maintenance and repairs completely because we did some repairs once we bought the property. If you live in the property, you obviously have to pay for water and electricity, and this is something that you can add on as well. Something else you can consider is if you have property managers to manage the properties for you, you can also use that. And then something else I would just like to do is to reserve a small amount of money every year for repairs and maintenance for the next year. So this will be different for everyone, but let's just use 1% as an example. This means our net operating income for this property is going to be 112,000 rand. And next we go to our cash flow, which is the most important part. So we can see that our net operating income or our cash available at the end of the month is going to be 9,377 rand, and our mortgage is 18,674 rand. So if we deduct this mortgage with our net cash flow, it gives us 9,296 Rand. So this is what you will have to pay to live in that property. So the trick with this is to decide what you are currently paying for your rent. So I'll scroll down and my current rent, for example, is 7,000 Rand. So if you want to house hack, you ideally want to beat your current rent or get as close to it as possible. Let's say, for example, I pay 10,000 Rand for my current property, and when I use the house hack strategy, I will only have to pay 9,200 Rand. This means this is a no-brainer to go for this house hacking strategy. So the idea would be the house hack should be green. If it's not green, it means it doesn't necessarily make sense. At the end of the day, there's two ways to approach this. You can either look for a property to house hack where you can live in the property and use a large part of the property, and although the amount that you will have to pay will still be quite expensive, you get to benefit from the larger part of the property. You can always rent out the larger part and live in a smaller part, which would effectively mean your rent or the amount that you have to pay is going to be much lower. Ideally, you would like to get a property that can pay for majority of your expenses, which makes it a much better deal. Again, if we look at this exact same sheet, and let's say, for example, the units that are to rent, we will be able to rent them for a larger amount because we renovated them a bit. So let's say this jumps up to 7,500 Rand and this one jumps up to 5,000 Rand. If we scroll down, it means that this property will only cost us 7,000 Rand to live there from our own pocket. This is a really nice strategy to use if you want to build wealth, acquire a good quality property, live in a nice neighborhood, live in a safe neighborhood without breaking the bank at the end of the day. Just remember, there's still a couple of things that you need to consider that we won't necessarily be able to cover in this video. Some of the things are like electricity and water. You preferably want separate electricity meters for all of your units, and you still need to consider other expenses that goes along with this type of strategy, like maintenance and repairs, and obviously including some amenities like Wi-Fi, or maybe including water for these units. At the end of the day, it can be possible to find a house hacking property that will pay for all of your expenses, and this would be the ideal situation. Although it's not as easy to find, but it's still possible. That means that you will generate more than enough income that will even cover your portion of your rent, meaning you can effectively live for free. This is what house hacking is all about.